and you're listening to WBAI New York, 99.5 FM, and WBAI.org. Coming up next is Ecologic, with quite a few guests talking about activism. Why are we activists? Why do we care, and why do we care enough to do something to make the world a better place? And I'll be talking with several people about that very subject. So right now, stay tuned for Ecologic. I'm Ken Gale.
Oh, people, don't you love this earth? We share with everything that grows. Don't you want to taste freedom, peace in this life? I believe we can make it whole again. I believe we can make it whole. Put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hot spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
If they keep on polluting the earth, then tell me where we gonna plant our seed. It makes me wanna cry for the children, makes me wanna cry for Mother Earth, makes me wanna cry for the children, makes me wanna cry.
Did they ever hear of solar power? Ever see a windmill go? Feel the pull of an ocean wave, the heat from a volcano. There's so much we could do, there's so much we could know, if we listen to the earth.
Every day is Earth Day. I'm Ken Gale, and this is Ecologic for March 31st, 2015, here on WBAI New York, 99.5 FM, and WBAI.org. Ecologic has a Facebook page. It's WBAI Ecologic, no spaces or dashes. WBAI Ecologic. The People's Voice Cafe is a folk music club at the community church on 35th Street between Park and Madison Avenues. Every Saturday evening, they have two musical acts whose lyrics have something to say about what's going on in the world. There are two shows in particular I want to point out. The New York City Raging Grannies on April 11th and a tribute to Ray Corona on April 18th. Patricia She is also performing the same evening as the Grannies, and there will be a lot of performers at the Ray Corona tribute, including the Ray Corona Band. Every performer is someone who headlines their own set, and this will be a great night to check out what the current folk music scene is like. Doors open at 7:30. Concert is from 8 to 10:30 at the Community Church, 35th Street, between Park and Madison Avenue. April 11th for the Grannies, April 18th for the Ray Corona Tribute. The New York City Safe Energy Coalition's third meeting is at the new location is this Thursday, April 2nd, at the NYU School of Law near Washington Square Park, Furman Hall, at 245 Sullivan Street. That's between West 3rd and West 4th Street. Seminar room 120. Be there at 6:30 for socializing and potluck. Meeting starts at 7 o'clock promptly. We meet every first and third Thursday. At the last meeting, we discussed various ways to get the messages out there and what form those messages will take. There's legislation to support, legislation to oppose, basic education to do to the general public, and we'll talk more about that later in this show. So again, that's Furman Hall, 245 Sullivan Street between West 3rd and West 4th, room 120. Trees reduce pollution. They provide shade on hot summer days, provide habitat for wildlife like songbirds. They help asthma sufferers, and they cheer up our concrete jungle. Friends of Brook Park in the Bronx is involved in a citywide tree giveaway on Sunday, April 19th from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. To get a tree, you have to agree to plant it in one of the 5 boroughs, keep the tree properly watered and maintained, but you can't plant your tree along streets, in city parks, in containers, terraces, balconies, or on roofs. You're supposed to be planting them in yards, courtyards, and schoolyards. Brook Park is at East 141st Street and Brook Avenue near the number 6 train. Other parks in the city are also giving away trees. Brook Park, East 141 and Brook Avenue. Nestle, Coca-Cola, and PepsiCo all bottle municipal water to sell. Their contracts rarely make them stop taking water during a drought. According to CourageCampaign.org, Nestle is still taking water out of California during the extreme drought they're having. And that apparently would be the case if New York City had another drought, with Coca-Cola bottling New York City tap water in Maspeth, Queens as Dasani water. So go to CourageCampaign.org, get involved in that. Winston Churchill said, Americans will always do the right thing after they've exhausted all other possibilities. So when are we going to stop using poisonous forms of energy? Millstone, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, 9/11, and Fukushima haven't seemed to exhaust all possibilities. All those oil train explosions haven't exhausted all possibilities. The more frequent gas pipeline explosions haven't. Even the ones in East Harlem and the East Village, which leveled buildings and killed people in a major media center. Well, how about this report by Joe Cronin, which is on Pace University's Earth Desk blog, which I learned about via Eco-Anchor-NYC. The route of oil trains with explosive back-end crude oil go right under West Point. Beneath Thayer Hall, the main academic building of over 100 classrooms, and Taylor Hall, which holds the dean's office, and Bartlett Hall, which houses the Department of Nuclear Engineering, the baseball stadium, and the officers' club. West Point is also 7 miles from the Indian Point nuclear plant. I would think everybody at West Point would want to be an environmentalist. Greenpeace is following a Shell oil drilling ship on the Arctic Ocean, the way they follow whaling ships. Look for a TV show sometime in the future. Joshua McElwee reports in National Catholic Reporter that Japanese bishops have asked the Pope to warn against the use of nuclear power in his upcoming encyclical on the environment. An encyclical is the highest form of teaching for a pope. Now let's see what happens. And save the date of April 18th. It's a National Day of Action Against Fast Track. Fast track is the president's way of bypassing Congress so that he can get the Trans-Pacific Partnership passed. And this way they won't have to read it into the Federal Register and nobody will know what is in the TPP. It's going to rip up environmental laws in the United States and in 13 other countries. It will declare clean air laws as restraint to trade and clean water laws as restraint to trade and indigenous rights and labor rights and banking reforms and internet freedom and so many other forms of our personal freedoms. That's what the Trans-Pacific Partnership will do. So certainly we want to stop fast track. And the City Council is involved in this. There is a City Council bill, number 576, to make New York City a TPP-free zone. If you don't know who your City Council person is, you can go to council.nyc.gov, and there's a menu that has who we are, or you can call 311. However, if you call 311, keep your sense of humor with you. When I called them to test that you could get the name and phone number of your City Council person, they have this automated menu. And so they said, give your question. They gave a couple examples. You're supposed to be able to talk in plain English. So I said, I want to know my city council member. And they said, you're calling about an arrest record. I'm like, I just started cracking up. I'm like, how in the world did this automated software connect city council member to arrest record? I guess they know something I don't. Anyway, that was great. So have your sense of humor and some patience if you're going to call 311. On the last episode of Ecologic, when I talked about atmospheric carbon dioxide not increasing in 2014, I feel as though I may have misled you into thinking greenhouse gas emissions did not increase. Not so, unfortunately. Methane emissions went up a great deal, and that methane is 120 times worse than carbon dioxide molecule for molecule. On the Ecologic website is an Ecolinks page where you can link directly to the full versions of the stories I summarize in my news and announcements section. www.comicbookradioshow.com/eco-links.html. Archives of Ecologic are all over the internet. Only one is on the WBAI archives, the last show from March 17th, with all news, information, and music. That show is also on ecoanchornyc.com, as are two others. The one on salamanders from January 20th, and the one from January 6th that's on what jet planes contribute to climate chaos and also on maglev trains. Tom Weissmuller has the winter predictions episode of Ecologic on his website, and I link directly to that too. Wondering why this winter was the way it was and how climate chaos played its part? This is the 6th year in a row where he predicted the winter accurately. There's a direct link to all of those shows on the past guests page, www.comicbookradioshow.com/eco-logic.html. That's the main Ecologic page. Then you'll get to the past guests page, the Ecolinks page, and my own permanent archives. Environment TV also has episodes of Ecologic on their page in video form, including the episode where one of my guests was the late Ray Corona, whose song Listen to the Earth is part of the opening theme you just heard. That's www.theenvironmenttv.com. They have a searchable website, and you can search for Ken Gale or Ecologic. And you can also search for Bee Report to hear Mercy Van Vleck updating you on threats to bees and our food supply. The latest environmental forum is on religion and environmentalism. People from 4 different religions tell how faith defines their activism. www.theenvironmenttv.com. When your air or water is clean, thank an environmentalist. If not, become one. Enough said.
I'm Donna Stein. I'm with New York City Friends of Clearwater and New York City Safe Energy Coalition.
J.K. Canepa, New York Climate Action Group, More Gardens.
I'm Nicole Minichiello, and I am with a number of groups as well, including the Safe Energy Coalition.
I'm Michael Brochstein with a number of groups, including the New York Safe Energy Coalition.
Hi, I'm Annie Wilson. I reside in New York City. I work with the New York Environmental Law and Justice Project.
Today, I've got so far 4 guests. I'm hoping that others will be coming in. And we'll be talking about what makes a person an environmentalist, what motivates you, what makes a person who's an environmentalist become an activist, and then why did you choose energy as your activism?
I'm an environmentalist because I like to breathe clean air, drink clean water, and eat foods without pesticides and radiation and anything else that's not healthy in it. So I'm an environmentalist because I want to live a good life and I want the rest of the world to live a good life. I'm an activist because I have a vision that I want to see a safer, cleaner, more sustainable world.
Well, I started out as a tadpole, and then I became a fish, and I went through all of phylogeny, and then I was born, and I think we all are like that. We're little animals, and we know it, and watching the clouds go by and looking at the little creatures in the grass, we're all connected. We're not environmentalists because we're the environment. That's what we are. And then it gets taught away, and we have 50 minutes in one classroom and 10 minutes to get to the next room, and we have gym, and we have this and that. And then we have to study for college, and these things fade away. But then, after living a pretty exciting and forgotten life, I was told about something called the Council of All Beings. And I said, the Council of All Beings, what's that? And they said, it's a process we do in deep ecology. I said, deep ecology? What's deep ecology? What's that? Because I knew ecology was like you count the rhinos and you move them over there because it's drying up over here. And so I followed those words, Council of All Beings. I didn't know where they would lead me, but I knew that in all the words that were coming at me, all the things that I was hearing and reading and seeing, those words had a message. So I followed the words Council of All Beings, and I found myself with these folks, these people who were talking about the planet consciousness and the 4.5 billion year old stardust creatures that we are, and the conscious cosmos, and all these things that started to ring true. And then I knew that I was connected to the earth and to the environment. And when I breathed at the trees, they were taking in my carbon dioxide. And when they breathed at me, I was taking in their oxygen. And I knew that we were all connected, and that was the environmentalist. And then what did I do with it? Well, there was this tricky guy, magic man, who had a mission to fight for the community gardens of New York City, and he would feed us at every meeting. And so I became an activist and started working to save gardens, and then it went from gardens to forests, and then, really the story here is energy and carbon, and it's not like jungles, and it's not like New York City community gardens, but this is the important work. That's my story.
This is Nicole, and unlike Judith, I don't know if I was a tadpole, unlike JK, but I worked in healthcare for the start of my career. I have a master's in healthcare administration, and as I worked in healthcare, I realized that we were fixing the problem so late in the game, and even our preventative care really meant almost nothing compared to the things that produced the diseases that existed. So we were, quote unquote, preventing breast cancer by giving mammograms early, or doing early detection for other diseases, but we weren't preventing those diseases. And as I went through the first few years of my career, I realized more and more that while healthcare and health insurance are so important, it didn't matter compared to having clean air, clean water, and land to live on. I really started to feel this weight of all these environmental issues I would see and experience in my life every day, and looking at these people come into the hospital with different diseases. And I realized at some point that I had to leave healthcare and I wanted to work as an activist. And that's what brought me here. And I'm interested in energy as well as just the broad scope of land, air, water, and that this is our world, and it's our one and only world, and we have a responsibility to take care of it.
This is Michael. I'd like to build upon what Nicole said about the responsibility. From an early age, I thought it was a moral problem when people put pollutants directly into the air, toxic air and water and land emissions. And that bothered me, and so I became an environmentalist, joined the Sierra Club when I was 21, and I've been keeping up on it. I'm just a tadpole in the activist sense, but since I went to engineering school and I have an MBA and I've worked in business, I've always been interested in how things work in business. So energy just has always somehow naturally been a interest of mine, because it sort of combines my interest in how things work technically as well as business. I studied energy markets at Columbia in graduate school, and it just all came together in the New York Safe Energy Coalition, which is why I joined it, and basically why I'm here. I figure, well, I'm not going to solve all the problems. I don't want to look back and say I just was inwardly oriented, narcissistic, and at least I'm trying, I figure.
I became an activist coincidentally. It didn't seem to be the beginning of the trajectory of my life growing up, but things sort of happened where I had to get involved, and it involved in a community that I had grown up in, and from there I got to work, and I think I've been at it ever since.
But we know, because we know all these wonderful people, and just you don't have to mention names, but just talk about other environmentalists.
Bill Pfeiffer comes to mind right away. Bill Pfeiffer is a great teacher for me. He started out in the 80s, he was walking across a bridge in St. Petersburg. He was a carpenter. I don't know why he was drawn to Mother Russia, only that his father was Russian. He was walking across the bridge and he felt the call of Mother Russia, and she was saying to him, we need help here, we need help here. They weren't able to get any word out from behind the Iron Curtain for the tremendous amount of pollution that was happening in Russia, and the radiation, the 12 time zones, 5 of which are pure forest, were being deforested, and terrible things were happening. The most polluted city in the world was Chelyabinsk. It's still pretty bad, and Chernobyl in the Ukraine, all these places, and they called to Bill. And so Bill he started smuggling computers into the Soviet Union. He took a big chance, didn't he? And he managed to hook up little communities of environmentalists all over Russia, and because they were now online, back in the 80s now, mind you, they were able to get the word out to the rest of the world, and things started to happen, and movements started to happen, and places were saved. The Siberian tiger, who almost disappeared off the face of the earth, is still with us to this day. And that's a great deal due to Bill and 3 other guys. So Bill, then his work, the Sacred Earth Network, evolved from hardline activism, Earth First type stuff, and rowing up from Vladivostok into Siberia. It evolved by meeting the Siberian people, by meeting the true shamans. The original name of the name shaman comes from Siberia, and they were the women. And he met these groups of people, and he became more profound and deeper than ever before. And so he's a very special person in my life, and he's still with us, very much so. He's, in fact, a lot younger than I am, so he's going to be around a long time. And he wrote a book called Wild Earth, Wild Soul. And that's just one. There are so many people. I don't even have to leave New York City and name 100 people right off the bat.
That was J.K. Canepa.
Hi, this is Donna. The biggest inspiration, many inspirations, but one very major inspiration is Pete Seeger. More than 45 years ago, he was walking along the river, and it smelled so bad. That's why all the railroads and factories are built around the river, because it was so polluted. Nobody wanted to be there. People didn't even know that they lived on an island in Manhattan.
That riverfront property was not something special.
No. And Pete said, I played in this river when I was a kid. I want my grandchildren to play in this river also. And he began he built the boat to save the river. He built the Clearwater and an organization around that. And other organizations popped up around it and worked on the Clean Water Act, and was an amazing. He should have won the other one. Nobel Prize. I should have won a prize for for being as much of a folk music legend. He was also an environmentalist legend, and he just passed away a year ago, January. So, but he was an inspiration. We have the Clearwater Revival coming up in June. Everybody should go.
And two people from Clearwater will be my guests on the next Ecologic in 2 weeks.
Executive Director Peter Gross and Manager Green, the Environmental Director.
Yep.
I'm the former president of the New York City Friends of Clearwater, but now a proud board member. No. So Pete had a way of making people want to love the river. And you love the river, you soft sell environmentalism, you love the river, then you're going to want to save it. You're going to want to be, you can become an environmentalist because you have a self-interest. So let's work on people's self-interest. You love music. Music is activism. Music can be activism music. Our friend Lake Corona made some beautiful songs about social and environmental activism, and you really want to. We want to have clear access to the river. If everybody can just do something, you can write to your local electeds to improve access to the river. Now, what does that do? We're environmentalists. What does that mean? You want them to build docks in Governor's Island? Why would you want to do that? Because more people going down the river will increase the love of the river, increase the wanting to help the environment. It's all part of it. If more kayakers and sailors were environmentalists, and they are getting to be.
I think I've sat in different groups with the folks around this table or in this studio, and I've worked with a lot of other folks in New York City, and I am just so impressed as someone who's maybe newer to the grassroots movements. I'm just so impressed with how dedicated people are. I meet folks at each meeting who are willing to spend so much time and energy working on these issues, and it's a true inspiration for, I think, everyone in any room, and certainly for me. And it just goes to show how much people care. And as you were talking about this, Ken, the thing that struck me most when I started getting involved with some of these groups is just what a burden was lifted for me, that I finally felt like I have some great friends, but their mind doesn't work like this on these issues that I think about. And it was such a relief, a mental relief, to be in the room with people who thought about these things day and night also, because before that I just felt a lot of times like I was crazy, and now at least you have a lot of company being crazy.
There's a number of people who inspire me in this field, and Ken Gale obviously is one of them, because he started the New York Safe Energy Coalition, which a lot of people sit back and they just hope somebody else will do something, or they don't do anything, and Ken actually made the effort to start something, which I'm starting to become involved with myself. There's too many people to name, but someone like a Bill McKibben, who started off as a writer, probably never thinking he'd be an activist, started writing on things that interested him, realized he really felt strongly about these things, and with a few undergraduates started 350.org, a worldwide movement, which then led to the climate march in September with 400,000 people in New York, as well as other climate marches around. So one person can make a difference, and it's just a matter of stepping forward, and that's what I'm hoping to try to do through this New York Safe Energy Coalition with Ken and everyone else in the studio.
I would just comment on the Bill McKibben phenomena, and I would say that there's a lot of funding behind Bill McKibben that people are maybe not aware of, and there are certain donor influences that probably are deciding which priorities should be decided upon. And there are many, many ways of contributing to the movement, and there are many issues that are tied to energy. We can go into agriculture, we can look at GMOs, we can look at no longer eating or using any animal products in a way to combat climate change. We can address our consumer habits, we can think about using less, we can think of recycling, we can think of not wasting. We can do all of these in the day-to-day with a consciousness. It doesn't necessarily mean to be an activist, to be engaged directly with a leadership and in some type of organization. I think that most of the consciousness building should, or hopefully will, come from everyone and their day-to-day decisions, because how things are now and the dire situation we have with the ice caps and what's taking place with greenhouse gases and how we abuse each other and war and nuclear and all these issues are really the result of consumerist mentality, of exploitation, and I hope that as the movement grows that these forms of awareness come from within and grow in each community, each of the needs, personal impact, personal interest, personal with a global view is how I look at participation.
So why energy as an issue, as one of your emphases?
I feel that you can make a difference locally, whereas some issues they feel like they're either literally far from us, geographically, and/or a small group may not make a difference. But there are plenty of things that a group of this size can't possibly have an influence on locally and statewide, maybe not federally. And that's one of the reasons that I'm involved.
Now, it takes a lot of people making some noise to get something done. If you want to be able to lay your head down at night and be comfortable and go to sleep, I need to know that I've done something. All right? Everybody can do something. Even if it's only educating yourself and talking to your neighbor. Do something. Make a call, write a letter, go to a rally. I'm sure we can think of a few other things. Just do something. And find your issue. Maybe your issue is building the waterfront for people to enjoy the river, like I said before. Maybe your issue is stopping TPP, which is probably the greatest threat to every single issue that we're talking about right now. Write a letter, call Stop Fast Track. Educate yourself about it. Whether it's stopping Indian Point. Do you remember well, some will and some won't. I remember when I was a kid, and you'll remember. I remember when I was a kid, and they would send us to the auditorium or in our classrooms and duck our heads underneath the chairs and desks to protect us from a nuclear bomb. It's like, I think if they're sort of extrapolating that now for today, all we have to do is listen to popular culture, and if we don't think about it, it's going to go away. The extreme version of that is in Florida, where the governor said we got to outlaw the term climate change. And then, so what? There's not going to be any climate change, especially for the state that's got the lowest sea level of all. Somebody made a funny joke the other day. Said, "Oh, that's good. If we just eliminate the word racism, we've cured the problem."
Right.
There's no more racism.
If we eliminate the word hunger, nobody will starve.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Wish it was so simple.
So just ducking under the chair is not going to make it better. We have to do something. That's my theme.
I'd like to throw out an announcement for tomorrow and the Port Ambrose event at the City Hall, where there'll be a press conference at noon and a public hearing at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. So that's tomorrow
City Hall.
at City Hall. And we're calling on Governor Cuomo to revoke or stop his support for the Port Ambrose LNG. And
LNG is liquefied natural gas.
yes, it is said to be an import facility. In any case, it's the expansion of a fossil fuel infrastructure that is contrary to what our needs are today. And
As we saw in the East Village a few days ago.
Oh, God.
yeah, well, the expansion of fossil fuel is ill-advised when the ice caps are melting and so forth. So we need to be focusing on using less and renewable energy.
Oh, I was listening to a show on was it CNN the other day with Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, and he said it was brilliant. Do a YouTube search on Jeffrey Sachs, SACHS, and there's not room in the atmosphere anymore to absorb the CO2. You know, we have to get renewables. And this country can support itself in renewables. If we had 1/10 the amount of subsidies that the oil companies get, we would for renewables, we would surpass it. I have a lot of faith in human ingenuity, and there are amazing inventions to advance solar, advance wind. Beautiful invention I saw the other day that you've probably heard of, that puts turbines within pipes. So as water is being pushed forward, back and forth, we're developing energy. How brilliant is that?
That question, why are we energy activists specifically? Well, there are a few major causes of catastrophic climate change, and we have to call it catastrophic. We can't just say climate change because that doesn't get the word out. I mean, what's more important? As John Seed said, this is the only game in town, really. So if you want to be in the game, the only game in town, this is it. It is to stop dumping carbon into the atmosphere, and that means stopping the runaway deforestation of our forests. It means to cut back on big agriculture and eating meat. That's a hard one. I don't know how to do that.
Meat.
And the third one is to stop the dumping from automobiles, from buildings, from power plants, from all the sources of carbon pollution in the atmosphere. And the biggest one right now, because it has some enthusiastic support from the Department of Energy of the United States and from Russia and from Canada, the biggest one is fracking. And fracking has been called the fuel to the future. So why am I an energy activist? I would much rather be spending my time defending community gardens, believe me, than going out to a hearing on some pipeline, some new pipeline. These pipelines are spreading. I would much rather be doing that, but this is the only game in town. This is the time. We are the people who have to respond to this. We can't wait another 20 years for the next generation to come along. Our great-grandparents weren't asked to do this. This is it.
As JK has mentioned, deforestation and some of the other things, I think for me it's all related, and all of us environmentalists are starting to see that it's all related, and you really can't just fight one thing. And the mountaintop removal groups are getting together with the anti-fracking groups, and they're getting together with the anti-nuke groups, and so that's all about energy. But obviously energy involves more than just the direct energy that goes into turning our light bulbs on. It's also things like the plastic and all the plastic we use every day, petroleum goes into making that plastic. Other resources go into producing that plastic. Then after that's used, typically one time, it gets disposed of. We use energy to have garbage trucks go pick all that stuff up, and then that's more energy, and then we have to find a dumping ground for it, which also produces greenhouse gases. So for me, energy is a huge issue, and I think we all are starting to see more and more that everything is just completely related and intertwined, whether it's pollution or dumping or plastics or other waste, energy waste, deforestation, and all of these issues. And I really think that the world we all are starting to see that, and it will become clearer and clearer as we go forward.
I want to echo what Nicole said about everything being connected. If you solve the problem of energy by making it clean in some manner, it'll affect virtually many environmental problems as well as climate change, because most CO2 comes from the burning of some sort of fossil fuel, the vast majority. And if you have clean energy, that means you have clean energy for transportation, clean energy for electrical generation, clean energy for buildings, whether it's heating, hot water, or the electricity that people use, as well as for commercial buildings. And if you all of a sudden had all of your energy supplied in a clean manner, then all sorts of environmental problems and all sorts of climate change issues sort of go away, because what's left over is a very small amount of pollution relative to what we have today. So solving the energy conundrum solves the vast majority of the problems.
Yes, there are also many false solutions being touted out there, whether it be carbon trading, offsets, switching from oil to gas. These type of very well-funded campaigns to change the consumer habits into something that does not redirect the activity into a more efficient system.
Right. Michael was talking about choices of clean energy, but you keep hearing about choices of different kinds of polluting energy.
And because I have the mic, I want to go back on action for Port Ambrose. Folks that can't get to City Hall tomorrow, here's the phone number to call Cuomo and ask him to veto the application for Port Ambrose LNG. Here's the number: 518-474-8390. Repeat, 518-474-8390. There's another dirty project coming down from Canada. The Champlain-Hudson Power Express Blackstone-funded transmission corridor, which involves over 20,000 acres, that will connect dams in Canada to Queens, New York. It is transmission corridor, will involve eminent domain claims, will run pretty much half under the river, half above ground, and at this time, the final permits have not been issued, and there is still a chance to block it and call on the revocation of what is the presidential permit, and calling on Cuomo again to ask him to revoke the Champlain-Hudson Power permit and to veto the Port Ambrose application.
And make two calls, not one, because they're liable to only count one of those issues that you bring up. So if you're bringing up two things, make two calls.
Make two calls, and I'll give the number one more time.
Every day.
518-474-8390. Thank you.
Well, you know, and on another level, we have the Algonquin pipeline that has to be stopped. We need to make calls on that. Now, I don't have that number handy right now. Somebody does, I hope. But they're building in the Algonquin pipeline right near Indian Point. Indian Point, which is about as unsafe as Fukushima. And somebody's giving me the number. All right.
Of course, 5 activists. You want some information? Somebody's got it.
Okay.
5 activists, no waiting.
I don't have it.
I don't have it. Okay. So, but you can go to sape.org and get all the numbers that you need there. You can also go to sanenergy.org, and there's articles on
StainEnergyProject.org.
StainEnergyProject.org. Yes, sorry, and get the information you need there as well. But how crazy is it to build a pipeline near a fault near a nuclear plant? I mean,
A high-pressure pipeline.
Does anybody ever hear of Russian roulette? You know. Yeah.
It is amazing, and Andy talked about the Champlain Hudson Express on this show about I guess a year ago with a filmmaker, and we were connecting the issue of dams in Quebec and the eminent domain in New York State with the Gulf Stream current, so that when they build these dams in Canada, they're affecting the climate in Europe by affecting the Gulf Stream, because the Labrador Current starts in Hudson Bay, right where the dams let out. And it's a bizarre sequence. And we're talking about everything is connected. It's connected in so many ways. And what Michael said about, act local because that's what you can do, I thought was one of my favorite bits of the whole show, Michael. The person who said, I don't have anything to say. You guys know so much more.
I just want to say, if you... Am I on?
Yep.
Yeah. If you act locally in New York, you're acting globally.
There you go.
I love hearing about all these issues, and I think it's so important to focus on each and every one of them. But from where it just seems like when you're hearing this that there's so many issues out there, and it's almost insurmountable, I feel personally, if we fight every issue individually. And we've had to do that, sadly, up until this point. That's the way things have worked. And what I would ask the listeners is to start to look at this, start to activate in a different way. New York City is looking at the plan for renewable energy, 80 by 2050, 80% renewables by 2050. Hopefully that'll be more. And it has to go beyond that, obviously, with all of these things. But we have to start looking at things and working for things, I think, in a different way. Not because there's anything wrong with what anyone in this room is doing. It's beautiful, beautiful work. But because there's so many different issues that I would just encourage people, as you hear one thing, I just want to go back to it's all connected. And one pipeline or one river or one dam is just that one thing. But if you save, you look at groups that save one swath of the Amazon rainforest, well, hundreds and thousands of trees are being cut down each day. And if you think of that as an analogy for the world, it just becomes something that clearly we as a people have to get invested, get involved, and start looking at things from a more holistic picture. So I would just encourage everyone to do that. Thank you.
With that, I think we're going to have to tie up this show. The hour just zoomed by. And I'll be back in 2 weeks with talk about the Hudson River and Indian Point and connecting music and activism. Because the folks in Clearwater, started by Pete Seeger, he knew the power of song. And so we'll be talking about that in 2 weeks. But I want to thank my guests.
Annie Wilson.
J.K. Canepa, and hello to my friends in New Haven Manor, including Mary.
Donna Stein, and we're all doing this because we care about the future.
Nicole Minichiello.
Michael Brochstein.
And I'm Ken Gale. And thanks for listening to Ecologic. And so, talking about environmentalism, I think I have to go out with this song by the Raging Grannies.
Oh, we're radical environmentalists. We're radical environmentalists. We like clean air and clean water, just like the farmer's daughter, 'cause we're radical environmentalists. Yeehaw! Oh, we like our veggies without pesticides, and hate beef and chicken fed with cows who die. We like fish without PCBs and forests filled with old trees, 'cause we're radical environmentalists. We like autos that will cause us no pollution, and we think laws should provide a safe solution. We like lawns grown without weed and feed. We'll toss out every gene splice seed. We're radical environmentalists. Yeehaw! We want power that can always be renewed.
And how?
And we want to change consumer attitudes.
Yes, indeed.
Recycle